Welcome to the Leader-Post Rider Rumblings podcast, episode number 138. Taylor Shire and Darrell Davis with you to discuss the Roughriders' latest win over the Hamilton Tiger Cats on the weekend, which was Saskatchewan's third straight to start the 2024 season. And as I wrote in the Leader-Post following the game, a lot of it was kind of overshadowed by the injury to Trevor Harris, Darrell. Kind of a convincing win, as many people called it, 36-20 over the Ticats, but that sort of question mark and hanging over it is the injury to Harris late in the first half.
Yeah, they were in control right from start to finish, weren't they? They recovered the opening kickoff was fumbled, and then 2 plays later they're in the lock. They're in the end zone. But late in the second quarter, they're winning what was 18-7, I think, Taylor, and there was this huge gasp, even in the press box, right, where we don't cheer very much, but you could hear it in the press box, and you could tell the entire stadium was, oh no. Trevor Harris is down and he's grabbing a knee. The quarterback for the Roughriders, who missed most of last season following major knee surgery, went down with a knee injury in the game against Hamilton. And you could everybody was kind of watching, and there was a small bit of relief to think, well, it was his left knee because last year it was his right knee. But he kind of hobbled off the field, walked his way to the locker room at halftime, and walked out after halftime with a brace on his left knee, which he was obviously trying to get back into the game, which said it wasn't too serious, but what a disaster that would be, wouldn't it, for the Roughriders if they were to lose Trevor Harris again this season?
Came back to last year when it was like, oh no, like what happened? And then when it happened on Sunday, it was like, oh no, not again, right? Season's going to go in the tank, this, that, and the other. But immediately after he got hurt, he was sort of pounding the turf, and I think that was more frustration than pain. And the competitor in him, he obviously wanted to get back into the game. Corey Mace decided not to put him in. I think the trainers obviously said, you should go in. Trevor probably wanted to go in, but it was very smart of them, in my opinion, to not play him in the second half. They had the lead. Shea Patterson looked just fine handling the offense. They have a bye week coming up. It wasn't a must-win game. There was nothing to me that said, put Trevor back in, aside from us now talking about the status of the quarterback going forward now that they're on a bye week. Right, it would put all that doubt to bed if he returned into the game.
Yeah, true.
Hey, I'm fine. He would just show it. He didn't talk to media after the game. Injured. Yeah.
Which was wrong. He should have been able to talk to the media. Yeah, that always bothers me. He played in the game.
For those not in the media, right? Injured players that don't finish the game usually don't talk to the media. However, there have been instances where some quarterbacks do. Quarterbacks specifically. Especially like Trevor was in the locker room when the reporters were in there after the game. There's instances where players are meeting with the medical teams, dealing with the trainers, getting examined, this, that, and the other. But Trevor was in his stall, looked fine, seemed fine. We didn't officially get to chat with him, so we didn't get to hear an update from him. But head coach Corey Mace said he should be fine when the team returns to the field, on June 30th, this coming Sunday, ahead of next Thursday's second straight home game versus the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, they'll probably have him back, and hopefully for the Roughriders they do. You and I might disagree a little bit, and I heard that on one of our call-in shows that a lot of people said, hey, Shea Patterson was pretty good, and I'm thinking, Shea Patterson wasn't very good. He didn't connect very much, like 4 passes he threw we were connected on. He ran a lot. He moved the pocket around a lot, which, Trevor Harris hasn't done. Trevor Harris hasn't run all season, which is kind of funny because he did run just before he got hurt, and he got called back for a penalty, so technically he still hasn't run all season. Maybe it's a bad luck karma thing that he got hurt right after that. But Shea Patterson moved the ball around, moved himself around, but didn't throw very well on the run. I was expecting more from him. I realize he hasn't seen any game action, but if they have to rely on that right now, I think that might be a bit of a worry. And I would think, Taylor, when the game was progressing and Trevor Harris was in Corey Mace's ear and saying, hey, coach, put me back in. If the game had gotten really close again, I'm thinking they might have had to put Trevor Harris back in. Fortunately for them, they didn't have to. And they say, why risk it? They've got as you said, the bye week coming up until they play Toronto on the 4th at home. So there is no real reason to do it. But I think if Shea Patterson had to play much longer, I think the Tiger
Yeah,
Cats might have pulled the game a little
and I
closer,
think
and they might have had to make
Shea
a tough
Patterson was
decision.
4 for 10 for 41 yards, and I think he controlled the offense. He didn't lose them the game by throwing picks. He had a number of overthrows and didn't necessarily look crisp and sharp with his passing. He missed a few probably, surefire first down throws that he should have had, and he'll tell you that, especially on that last drive when they could have sealed it. They ended up going 2-0 and had punted away. And so, yes, I look at it from a protecting the lead standpoint where they're up 18-7 at the half. All Shea Patterson has to do is sort of protect the lead. He got a lot of help from the defense, 2 pretty crucial interceptions in the second half. 1 went back for a touchdown. So that obviously helps the quarterback, hold that lead, protect that lead. I don't think, obviously, Shea Patterson didn't do enough if the Riders had to come back in that game, and he wouldn't have won them the game based on his stats and how he looked if they were trailing at halftime or even in the third quarter. But I think he did enough with controlling the offense, and I think he's got to thank his running back, A.J. Ouellette, for a lot of that, because a lot of Ouellette's yards through the air and along the ground were in the second half, including a couple big first down runs. That one that I think it kind of set the tone that, the Riders are going to finish this thing. It was in the fourth quarter when he sort of Superman dove for the sideline that got the first down. And that was like, okay, Saskatchewan can kind of exhale a little bit. And they were in full control at that point.
Yeah, they really wanted to start running the football. And to A.J. Ouellette's credit and the offensive line's credit, with a backup lineman in, Ryan Sevier, playing for Philip Blake, they did a pretty good job of getting the running game established, especially at the end. That's when they have to run the football, Taylor, and they did at the end. So they ran the football effectively, but that was after they had thrown some passes to Ouellette and run him around the outside, which opened up the middle a little bit for him. So he did a good job. Patterson, as you said, didn't give it away. I think they really want Trevor Harris to come back. Who wouldn't, the way he's played this year? But the offense jumped into a big enough lead early on, and then let's give full credit to the defense. Hey, you mentioned the interception. How many great players,
and
by
just
good
back
players
to the quarterback
you see for the rest of that game?
For one moment, Shea Patterson did not create a quarterback controversy, so we could leave it at that. That's how well he played, or how he didn't play, is that he did not create a quarterback controversy. This is still Trevor Harris's team, because you see that sometimes when a quarterback comes in, throws 3, 4, 5 touchdowns, in relief, and all of a sudden is the next greatest thing on earth. So Shea Patterson didn't look that. He looked fine. No quarterback controversy. Trevor Harris is clearly going to be the starter when healthy. I fully expect him to be on the field on Sunday ahead of the next home game on the 4th. But as for the defense, as you mentioned, I think it was sort of a redemption game for a lot of them. They let Bo Levi Mitchell throw for 380 in the first matchup between these two, and I'm just going to look at the stats here. I think they held him to 295, which it seems to be a little inflated. I think there was a few throws in the fourth quarter that'll inflate that total, but 3 interceptions, 2 sacks by Charbel DeBeer, including 1 strip. I feel like it was a redemption game overall. The only blip really was Roland Milligan, letting Shamar Bridges go over his head, and then Milligan then totally redeemed himself with an interception late. So I'm going to say that was probably the most overall solid defensive game that we've seen, obviously, in 3 weeks, and I think it's a sign of things to come from this defense that will produce touchdowns like that and big plays.
That was one of the things that Corey Mesa head coach challenged them on. So we need defensive pressure from you, especially from the front 4. They got it quite a bit. We haven't seen much from Micah Johnson yet in the middle, which surprises me. Maybe he's getting older. It's 3 games in. You expect him to make some noise. Anthony Lanier, the other defensive tackle, the only time we really heard him was in the last possession, or one of the last possessions in the fourth quarter, 2 roughing the passer penalties. And you can question whether one of them deserved to be, but you can't take those chances hitting a quarterback with 1 extra step or a little bit late. So he took bad penalties, but they got some pressure from those 4. They didn't use their 3-man rush as much, but as you said, they got great plays from after Roland Milligan got burned on the 1. Played exceptionally well. Marcus Sales, who had a bad game the first game and his first one in, played exceptionally well. C.J. Avery, again, makes a big tip on Jameer Thurman's interception for a touchdown. So they got big plays by the right people at the right time. And if you call it redemption, I think you're probably right on that. They had to prove something. And as an entire defense, I think they did. I give them most of the credit for that victory. I know Saskatchewan, the offense started strong, but the defense, when they didn't have a quarterback in there, you lose your starting quarterback, the defense
that's
really
one of the things
picked
I
it
asked
up to make
Jimmy
sure that the
Thurman about
victory
after
was
the
sealed.
game was, as a defensive group, when your quarterback goes down, do you sort of take more on your shoulders as a defensive group to say, hey, we're going to close this out. We have the lead as a defense. We need to close this out. And he said, yeah, no doubt. Like anytime a quarterback goes down or a star player, there's a sort of a collective belief that everybody has to do a little bit more. And that was certainly Jimmy Thurman's thoughts on that. AJ Ouellette kind of said the same thing, that he needed to take some pressure off of Shea Patterson by producing. So I think anytime Harris goes down, or any player like that, everybody sort of does a little bit more, puts a little bit more on their plate. And I certainly think we saw that on Sunday. One other thing that I wanted to touch on that it often gets overshadowed, but the play of the special teams. The Riders have one of the best special teams units. Kickers for sure. Obviously, they have a great punter, great field goal kicker, but their coverage unit was really good. I don't think they allowed a large return, and Mary Alford had a big return, so the return unit good as well. But the very first play, for the first time in a while, yes,
which wasn't
negated
negated by a
two
penalty,
penalties,
by
they
the
would
way.
definitely be the best return unit in the league so far. But I think their coverage unit deserves a bit of praise, specifically on the first play. Thomas Bertrand Hudon got absolutely walloped and then got up. I was watching him for whatever reason. He got absolutely leveled in the middle of the field, then came over straight sideways and basically threw a spear hit on the Ticats returner, popped the ball loose, and Christian Albert recovered it. So it's just that attitude of you're going to get knocked down, you're going to get right back up. So I think Thomas Bertrand Hudon deserves a little bit of credit for that first play of the game to set the tone.
It did, yeah. The special teams had been. There's another thing Corey Mason had been challenging them with. They had 8 penalties on special teams in 2 games, which is an average of 4 a game, and that wipes out some of Mario Alford's good returns. So he challenged them on that as well. There are the 3 challenges we talked about already: the offensive line and AJ Ouellette getting more yards, the defensive front putting pressure on them, and the special teams saying cut back on the penalties. And he got that from all 3. All 3 demands were met. As you said, the special teams, only 1 penalty when they're used to getting 4 a game. That's quite a cutback for them, and that was an important thing. And I liked how he put a little bit of onus on every faction of his team, his offense, his defense, and his special teams, because they have to contribute. And Corey Mason's big on stuff like that to make sure that everybody is involved. And the fact that all 3 of them did what he asked them to do, I think, is a big point
So
in their favor in terms of why they won that football game.
Are we planning the parade right yet? Tell me, where are the holes in this team? What negatives have you seen through the first 3 weeks, and what do they need to correct? Obviously, you mentioned 3 that they needed to correct from week 2 to 3, but where are they at now that they're in the bye week in week 4 of the season?
Yeah, they got the weaknesses were really they never shied away from them. To Corey Mason's credit, he always said we realize these things have to be cleaned up. So it's the same thing that you and I talk about all the time, Taylor. That the mistakes we see them making are the ones that they obviously realize they're making. So when they clean that up, how well will they play? Well, we saw how well they're capable of playing in a game where they cleaned up the 3 areas that needed work. Where would they need? Well, Sam Emilus kind of passed, but hasn't been a real key member of the receiving corps. Keon Schaefer-Baker did the last game. Maybe they didn't need to throw the football that much, but all of a sudden the receivers disappeared a little bit last game. So, maybe they'll want to get that going again. I don't see a real weakness that you're going to point out and say this is going to beat them. Maybe the penalties will, if they don't clean all the way through. They can't. You have to play on the edge all the time. You can't go over it. But I think that's the one that they'll have to keep their eyes on the most. In terms of they'll need more pressure again. The 3 things that they did last game that they worked on, those are the things that they still have to obviously feel that they're a little bit flawed in and continue to improve in those areas.
The biggest
but I don't
thing
think
for
they're
me
real
is
horrible
to
weaknesses
see them
anymore.
against a top opponent. I don't think Edmonton is going to finish near the top of the West Division, and I don't think Hamilton is going to finish near the top of the East Division. So they should be 3-0 at this point in the season. Against, I would say, 2 of the weaker teams in the CFL. I want to see them against Toronto, who's looked good, and they have next Montreal, BC, even Winnipeg, who's 0-3.
Yeah.
I don't, can the Riders handle them? Can they beat them and show that they're a 3-0 team and Winnipeg's an 0-3 team? So wait for that matchup.
Yeah.
That's
funny
my
you
point,
mention those
right?
four teams.
So
those are the next four teams of their schedule.
Okay, we're out of the gate. We've corrected
Yeah.
a few things, but now really this is going to be the test. They obviously have a nice little cushion, so if they end up going 2-2, 1-3, they're not, going to be dead last by the midway point in the season. They're going to be right in there. If they somehow manage to go 3-1, who knows, 4-0, then they're going to be building off this strong start, and this is going to be a team that's for real this year. But I think the first 3 games are a bit of a warm up. These next 4 are really going to test us.
Yeah, they were 3-1 last year, remember, and then they lost Trevor Harris then too. So that's the knock on wood that doesn't happen to them again. None of us ever won. Not that we cheer for the team or against the team, but of course we never want a player to be injured, and especially somebody who's worked so hard to get back into playing shape. But that's kind of when the wheels fell off them last year, and you could just see them kind of disintegrating because they didn't get great backup quarterback play. If they don't have to get to that stage this year, they're probably in pretty good shape. The 3 wins you said, yes, lucky a little bit in the first 2, solid effort in the third one, but that confidence that builds in them. Now we know how to win, they're thinking. We know what it takes. We know we're capable of pulling out a fourth quarter victory. We know that we're capable of winning all the way through a football game. So those are just good things that you put in your psyche and you carry along during the season. So I think that this is a good sign for this football team, that they realize that they've got the right group. They've got the right guy in charge of the team. I keep thinking that he's instilling, and I wrote about that today. It's coming in the Leader-Post. The culture that Corey Mace is installing. To me, the last guy who did that was Jim Hobson. He did it when he arrived in 2004 and said, we're no longer that little engine that can't do it. We can do it. We can do it. And Corey Mace has this group believing the same thing. It's a family. That's what he talks about. That's the culture he's after, and that's the culture he's building. But it leads itself to the same thing. We can do it. We're all in this together. Yes, it can be done. And to me, it's a first chance for a successful culture to be installed in this team for a decade.
Corey Mace put that out on Twitter after the game. For Hoppy is all he said. I just think that I don't really know how to describe it other than class, because he wasn't here during Jim Hobson's era. He obviously knew who he was being on the opposition, but for a guy who is a first year Saskatchewan Roughrider to sort of understand the legacy and all the stuff that Jim Hobson built, for him to go out and put that out there, I think just says a lot about who he is and the class that he has by saying that. And I know you wrote about that, but I think it showed a lot. The 2 words really showed a lot.
Yeah, exactly. He gets it. Corey Mace gets it here. He couldn't wait to move here, right? Like the last couple of head coaches didn't live here, and that used to be a requirement. When they hired coaches and general managers here, they had to live here, and the last 2 didn't. And there's always that little bit of separation. Not that they can do whatever they want, but Corey Mace jumped right into the community. I got a kick out of it, and I mentioned that too, that one of his earlier tweets on X was where's a good Chinese food restaurant? And then he does through some other things and is in the community, but he gets it. And he says this is for Hoppy because he met Jim Hobson, and he knows that the lecture theater in the locker room is named after Jim. And he talked to Jim Hobson. Jim Hobson, who I knew pretty well, obviously, and you know that because I wrote a book with him. Jim loved the fact that Corey Mace had been hired here, and he thought this is the guy who's going to do it. And he couldn't wait to see that first home game. And unfortunately, cancer got him in April, and so he missed it. But maybe the spirit of Jim Hobson's here a little bit too with him. And Corey Mace, as you say, Taylor, understands the important people and how much people care about this franchise. And he's carrying that on as a legacy for guys like Jim Hobson and so many great players and people who have helped build this franchise. That's what makes the Rough Riders great. Whether we like them and cheer for them or cheer against them, you have to admire what they mean to this community and how instilled they are in this community. And Corey Mace understands that maybe as well as anybody, as well as any newcomer does. But I'm not going to call him a newcomer for very long because he's really a part of this.
Of course, the Riders
place.
on a bye now, but the Riders will face the Toronto Argonauts, where Corey Mace came from, next week. So that kind of sets the table. We've got a lot of time to talk about it. Next Thursday is going to be the game, Mosaic Stadium, but that kind of sets the table for a pretty nice sort of head coach against your former team matchup.
Yep, a great one. And that Toronto, the game that we just watched, Toronto beating Edmonton, was such a close game. And Cameron Dukes, the new young quarterback who's replaced Chad Kelly with the Toronto Argonauts, I like that guy. He plays well for a basically a first-year quarterback, just learning the ropes. Makes it pretty exciting. We're going to have to wait an extra week. The Rough Riders deserve it. It's a good schedule for them to have this bye week right now, right? There's some guys, especially with the quarterback, who might be limping. And you play 3 games, you've won all 3. You can't wait to get back, but you also need the break. And as you said, the Toronto Argonauts coming to town, there's more than just Corey Mace. He's got a couple of coaches, a couple of players who joined him from the Toronto Argonauts. So that's going to be a fun one to watch. And it's unfortunate, but maybe good for them that we get to wait
sometimes
a week and
that
a
does
half
get
before we get to see them again.
Some player facing his former team, some coach facing his former team. If you look, you could probably make a connection to almost anybody around the league. You could, hey, Kevin Glenn, what's it like to face your former team this week? Type of story. You could do that on not any given week with Kevin Glenn.
Every team was his former team.
Looking across the CFL, obviously the Riders are idle this week. Has there been anything that sort of surprised you or anything that has jumped out to you so far through 3 weeks?
The strength of the Alouettes has really surprised me. The fact that they've been able to carry on that confidence. I know they're a pretty good team. You don't win the Grey Cup without being a good team. But the fact that they've really carried that on again. Cody Fajardo, the quarterback who was here, we know what he's like. He loves carrying a little chip around on his shoulder, right? The fact that they didn't get a home game until the 3rd week of their schedule to raise their pennant. The little things that motivate the Alouettes is kind of funny, but they got a good team. So the fact that they're undefeated, really amazing. The strength of Cameron Dukes. We'd talk mostly about the quarterbacks, I guess. Stepping in to run the Argonauts has really been impressive. And you know what? Edmonton's losing, but they don't look bad. They just can't win. So those are and Winnipeg too. The same thing. Winnipeg doesn't look horrible. They just can't win.
Yeah,
so
Winnipeg.
Those are my surprises so far. I think this season
would certainly be the one that jumps out to me. They don't feel like an 0-3 team, but they are, and the numbers don't lie. And that's really all that's important at the end of the day. So I don't think they're going to finish in last place. Obviously, they will put a few wins together because they have the talent, but I don't think they're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that we've seen in years past. So I think this is sort of the year that finally they're not at the top of the West Division standings.
Yeah, 4 straight years they've won the division, haven't they? So it's time for somebody else. And the Bombers got a little old and lost some other players and got a little old in some spots. So time for somebody else. And
yeah, you never know. Well, the Riders, of course, off to a 3-0 start. And they are currently now in a bye week, set to face the Toronto Argonauts next Thursday. Darrell, thanks again for taking part in episode 138 of the Rider Rumblings podcast. All right, we'll talk to you next week.
Always fun. Thanks, Taylor.